You know, we spend so much of our lives trying to avoid mistakes, right? Trying to get everything perfect on the very first try. But what if our whole relationship with failure is completely backward? What if the real key to getting things right is actually getting them wrong first?
Yeah, we've all heard quotes like this one from Michael Jordan, and the idea is everywhere that success is built on this huge mountain of failures, that the path to winning is paved with all these missteps. And it's an inspiring thought for sure. We see it in the stories of so many successful people.
But let's just pause on that for a second. Because just failing more often, well, that's not some magic formula. The real secret, the thing that separates just random mistakes from actual meaningful progress, isn't that we fail, it's how we fail. It's all about the process.
So, to really understand that process, we have to start with our own biology. It turns out our brains are incredibly well equipped to handle errors. I mean, they're literally designed to learn from them, even when our emotions are just screaming at us to run and hide.
Scientists actually have a name for this. It's called error-related negativity, or ERN for short. And this isn't just some abstract theory. It is a real, measurable electrical signal in your brain. It's like this tiny spark that fires the exact moment you mess up.
Think of it as your brain's own little oops signal, an internal alarm bell that something has gone wrong. And the crazy part is, it happens before you even have time to consciously think, oh, I messed that up. It's your brain on this deep, primal level, flagging an opportunity to learn. It's a gift, really.
And that brings us to the central paradox. If we have this built-in, super fast error detection system, this perfect little learning signal, why do we so often repeat the exact same mistakes? Why does failure feel so paralyzing instead of feeling, well, instructive? The answer, it turns out, isn't in our wiring. It's in our psychology.
So, what's the thing that gets in the way? Well, the culprit, for most of us anyway, is our ego. While our brain is busy trying to process a mistake as pure data by sending out that ERN signal, our ego jumps in to protect our sense of self.
See, for our ego, a failure isn't just data, it's a judgment. It feels like a direct threat to our identity as a competent, capable person. And so it goes into full-on defense mode, building this psychological wall to shield us from the sting. The problem is, that wall, it also blocks the lesson.
And our ego can get pretty creative with its defenses. Psychologists call one the sour grape effect. You know, that's when we suddenly decide the goal we failed at wasn't that great anyway. I didn't really want that promotion. And then there's the ostrich effect, where we just, bury our heads in the sand and pretend the failure never even happened. This all ties directly into Carol Dweck's groundbreaking work on mindset. Someone with a fixed mindset hears that brain signal and treats it like a final verdict. See, you're just not good enough. But someone with a growth mindset, they hear the exact same signal and reframe it as a question. Okay, interesting. What can I do differently next time? So the critical difference is all in how you interpret that alarm your brain is sending you.
So, how do we actually break through that ego wall and start failing intelligently? Let's take a look at some people who really mastered this. Their stories aren't just about being persistent. They're about having a deliberate, thoughtful process.
All right, let's play a little game. I'm going to show you a few numbers. First one up, 5,126. Any idea what that could be?
Okay, next number. A nice round 1,000. Just tuck that one away in your memory.
And finally, 144. 3 big, totally random-looking numbers. So what's the connection?
These are the documented failures behind some absolutely massive successes. James Dyson learned from over 5,000 broken vacuum prototypes. Edison famously saw his 1,000 attempts not as failures, but as necessary steps. And Jack Canfield was told no 144 times. They didn't just fail, they meticulously learned and adjusted with every single attempt. And this brings us to the archer. A master archer doesn't just shoot arrow after arrow, just hoping one hits the target. No, they shoot, they miss, and listen, this is the most critical part, they pause. They stop and reflect on what went wrong. They adjust their stance, their aim, their breath, and only then do they shoot again. It's this deliberate cycle of action and reflection.
Right at the heart of that pause, in that moment of reflection, is the most difficult but also the most powerful step of all, telling your ego to just take a seat. You have to be willing to look at the miss honestly, without making a single excuse.
The author of our source material here puts it so beautifully.
Real learning can only begin when the ego steps aside. Because when your ego's in charge, it's building those walls of excuses. But when it's quiet, it opens the door to actual insight.
He uses this absolutely brilliant golf analogy. The ego shot, that's the high-risk, low-probability hero shot you take over the water hazard just to impress people, which, let's be honest, usually ends with a splash. But the smart shot, that's the strategic play, based on an honest assessment of your skills, that gives you the best chance of a good outcome. The only difference is whether your ego or your logic is holding the club.
Okay, so how do we actually do this in practice? Well, research suggests a few really powerful techniques. You can try self-distancing, thinking about your failure in the third person, like, why did they fail? It just helps remove some of that emotional sting. Or try offering advice to someone else struggling with a similar problem. It actually forces you to crystallize what you've learned. And keeping an error journal can turn your failures from painful memories into a personal data set you can use for improvement. Ultimately, that's the core lesson here, isn't it? A mistake is just information. It's that ERN signal from your brain, a signpost telling you where to adjust, what to change, and how to get better. It is not, and it never was, a verdict on your worth.
And this quote from J.K. Rowling just perfectly captures the true risk. The biggest failure isn't missing the mark, it's being too afraid to even take the shot in the first place. Living so cautiously that you avoid any possibility of failure, well, that also means you avoid any possibility of growth, discovery, and real success. So the question really isn't if you will fail. You will. The real question is, which of your failures will you choose to treat as a teacher? What data is just waiting for you right now if you can just set your ego aside for a moment and truly look?